Welcome, 10 Standard students. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here for this complete, whiteboard-style explainer of Chapter 4 from your economics textbook. Today, we're going to build absolute conceptual mastery of a topic that literally shapes the world you see around you every single day: globalization and the Indian economy. We're going to break down every concept, every diagram, and every single exercise right from your NCERT textbook, so by the end of this, you won't just be memorizing answers, you'll deeply understand how our modern world actually works. Grab those notebooks, get comfortable, and let's dive right in.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're breaking this chapter into 6 chunks, starting with the rise of MNCs, how they interlink production, and how foreign trade integrates markets. Then, we'll clearly define globalization, explore its enabling factors, and wrap up by testing your mastery.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the rise of MNCs.
To really get this, let's do a quick history check. In the past, foreign trade was pretty much the only thing connecting countries. Think of those old trade routes bringing groups like the East India Company to our shores. But recently, a massive new force has stepped onto the stage: the multinational corporation, or MNC. An MNC is basically a company that owns or controls production in more than one nation. But why go through all that hassle? Well, let's look at a brilliant example straight from your textbook. Imagine a giant MNC producing heavy industrial equipment. They don't just build the whole thing in one giant factory. Oh no, it's like a massive global puzzle. Step 1, they design it and research centers in the US to capture top-tier innovation. Step 2, the actual physical components are manufactured in China, taking advantage of super competitive cheap labor. Step 3, those parts are shipped and assembled in Mexico and Eastern Europe because, well, they're physically closer to the huge buyer markets in the West. And finally, Step 4, once the product is sold, who handles the customer care? India, because we have a massive pool of highly skilled, educated, and English-speaking youth.
And that exact last step, it happens in places just like this: a bustling call center in Bengaluru. Armed with advanced telecom facilities and steady internet, young Indian professionals provide world-class support to customers who might be sitting thousands of miles away in New York or London. By spreading out production like this, cherry-picking the absolute best and cheapest resources in each country, the MNC can achieve mind-blowing cost savings. We're talking up to 50 or 60%. The financial advantage is just massive, which is exactly why these multinationals are so incredibly driven to operate this way.
Moving right along to Section 2, interlinking production across borders.
So, MNCs are always hunting for locations close to markets with cheap labor and favorable government policies. Once they find that sweet spot, they use 3 main strategies to interlink their production globally. First up is the joint venture. This is where an MNC sets up production jointly with a local company. It's a total win-win. The MNC gets a local foothold, and the local company gets a massive injection of cash for new investments and access to the latest global tech. Second, and this is actually the most common route if an MNC has huge wealth, is simply buying local companies. They just buy up a local business to rapidly expand. Your textbook gives a perfect example. Cargill Foods, a huge American MNC, bought out smaller Indian companies like Parak Foods. Since Parak Foods already had a massive marketing network in India, overnight Cargill became the largest producer of edible oil in the country. Wild, right? The third strategy is placing orders. In industries like garments, footwear, and sports items, these giant MNCs don't even bother setting up their own factories. Instead, they place massive orders with a huge network of small, independent producers around the world. The small producers make the goods, and the MNC simply slaps its famous brand name on the final product.
Just look at this real-world example from our textbook. These are women working from their homes in Ludhiana, meticulously stitching footballs. And who are they making them for? Large international MNCs. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is power. These giant MNCs have tremendous power to dictate the price, the quality, the delivery schedules, and even the labor conditions for these distant producers. So whether it's through joint partnerships, aggressive buyouts, or placing massive orders with small manufacturers, MNCs exert a hugely strong influence on local production. They are literally interlinking locations that are scattered all across the globe.
Now, to pull off any of those 3 strategies, we need to understand one core economic term. The engine driving all of this is foreign investment. Let's break it down simply. Investment is just the money spent to buy assets, things like land, buildings, machines, and equipment. But when this investment is made by a multinational corporation in a country other than its home base, it gets a special name: foreign investment. And remember the golden rule of economics here, guys. Any investment, whether it's foreign or local, is made with one primary hope: that these assets will earn greater profits. That's the bottom line.
That brings us to Section 3, integrating markets through foreign trade. Try to imagine what a market looks like without any foreign trade. In a purely domestic market, producers can only sell their goods within their own country. They only compete with other local producers. And for you, as a buyer, your choices are strictly limited to whatever is made locally. But foreign trade completely destroys those boundaries. To put it simply, it gives producers a passport to reach way beyond their domestic markets. They can now sell and compete in markets located in countries all over the world. And for buyers, it's a total game changer. Importing goods produced in another country expands your choices tremendously. But what's really fascinating is what happens to the prices. When foreign and domestic goods are placed side by side in the same market, the prices of similar goods tend to become equal. You suddenly have producers separated by thousands of miles directly and intensely competing against each other.
But we have to keep something in mind. While expanded choice and equalized prices sound fantastic for us as consumers, this integration means fierce and sometimes brutal competition for the sellers. Small local traders like those transporting local ready-made garments on a bullock cart now face incredibly stiff competition from both giant MNC brands and a flood of cheap imported goods. So foreign trade is a powerful, powerful force. It connects and integrates markets across different countries, but it fundamentally changes the survival game for local businesses.
All right, Section 4. What exactly is globalization? Let's get to the formal definition.
Here's your exact textbook definition, and I really want you to lock this into your memory. Globalization is the process of rapid integration or interconnection between countries. That's the core of it, rapid integration. And who's the main driver behind the wheel? As we've just seen, MNCs are playing the major role. By constantly hunting for cheaper production locations and by ramping up both foreign trade and foreign investment, they are moving more goods, services, investments, and technology between countries than ever before in human history. Regions of the world are in closer contact today than they have ever been.
Now for Section 5, Factors Enabling Globalization. What actually makes all this possible? The twin engines driving this massive interconnection are massive leaps in technology. First, you have a total revolution in transportation. Think of giant shipping containers that have made delivering physical goods across incredibly long distances way faster and, most importantly, at vastly lower costs. Meanwhile, on the other side, an explosive revolution in information and communication technology, or IT, has completely transformed how we share information globally. Let's summarize these enablers clearly because this is super important. You have transportation technology moving physical goods cheaply, and you have information technology, computers, the internet, allowing instantaneous electronic mail and voicemail across the world at practically zero cost. This is exactly what lets an MNC in the US seamlessly run a customer care center in India. But here's the catch. Technology alone isn't enough if governments decide to block trade. So the third massive enabler is a crucial shift in government policy called liberalization. I want you to remember this term. Liberalization simply means removing barriers or restrictions set by the government on foreign trade and investment. When a government liberalizes trade, it's essentially saying to businesses, go ahead, freely make decisions about what you wish to import or export. And who pushed for this massive policy shift? That brings us to our fourth enabler, powerful international bodies, primarily the World Trade Organization, or WTO. Their entire mission is to convince and, frankly, sometimes pressure countries to liberalize their policies. They argue that all barriers to trade are harmful and that trade between countries should be completely 100% free.
Finally, Section 6. Let's test your mastery. Time to put these concepts to work.
Here's a great fill-in-the-blank question straight from your textbook to test your attention. It says, WTO was started at the initiative of blank countries. The aim of the WTO is to blank. Go ahead, pause this explainer for just a second. Really dig into your memory. What type of countries initiated the WTO, and what is its fundamental goal when it comes to international trade?
All right, let's break this down together. The answer is WTO was started at the initiative of developed countries. Remember, these are the wealthier nations that have those massive MNCs looking to expand their reach. And its aim is to liberalize international trade. The WTO establishes the rules regarding this trade for its roughly 160 member countries, and its job is to ensure those rules are obeyed to keep global trade flowing freely.
Now, let's level up and tackle a much deeper analytical challenge from the text. This touches on a very real, ongoing global debate. The textbook points out that while the WTO is supposed to allow free trade for everyone, in practice, developed countries have often unfairly held onto their own trade barriers. Developing countries are essentially looking at developed country governments and asking, look, we reduced our trade barriers just like the WTO rules said, but you ignored the rules.
You continue to pay your own farmers vast sums of money in subsidies. You ask us to stop supporting our farmers, but you do it yourselves. So is this truly free and fair trade? How on earth do we analyze a situation like this? Analyzing this neutrally, exactly as our textbook presents it, we see that this inequality sparks a massive debate around a concept called fair globalization. Because right now, globalization isn't perfectly equal. Fair globalization would mean ensuring that the opportunities of this interconnectedness are truly for everyone, and that the benefits are shared much more fairly. The textbook suggests that the governments of developing nations have a really crucial role to play here. They have to protect the interests of all their citizens, not just the wealthy ones. They can support their small local producers until they are strong enough to actually compete on the global stage. If it's necessary, these governments absolutely can and should use trade and investment barriers. Furthermore, they need to negotiate fiercely at the WTO for fairer rules, maybe even by teaming up with other developing countries to push back against the domination of developed nations.
And that brings us to the end of this comprehensive explainer. We've learned that globalization, this rapid integration between countries driven by MNCs, foreign trade, and massive technological leaps, is a permanent reality of our modern economy. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to ponder as you review your notes today. The process of globalization might be unstoppable, but the outcome is definitely not fixed. As our world continues to rapidly integrate, what specific steps do you think must be taken by citizens and governments to ensure that the incredible wealth and prosperity generated by this interconnection are truly and fairly shared by everyone, and not just scooped up by giant corporations? Think about it. Discuss it with your friends or classmates. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep asking great questions, keep reviewing your concepts, and most importantly, keep learning, guys.